You're listening to the Let's Talk Clarity, a podcast where we get real about mental health and well-being without shame, stigma, or sugarcoating. I'm Zeenat Noorani, the Clarity Coach and co-founder director of the Let's Talk Better CIC campaign, here to help children and young people and adults navigate life's challenges with more confidence, more clarity, and a lot more compassion. Now, my last episode, 154, was on nurturing creativity, the power of crafts and arts for mental well-being. So if you haven't heard that, then do pop along to either my YouTube channel or my podcast, which is on Spotify or any of the other Audible platforms. Now, today, however, is really, really special because it follows on perfectly from what I was talking about in arts and crafts and mental health and well-being, but in a lot more depth and more on the therapy side of things. So I'm going to be welcoming Cathy Williams, who you can see is sitting there patiently. And she's my special guest, and we'll be exploring mental well-being through movement, expressive art, and creative therapy. And as I mentioned on my last podcast, arts and craft, it can be life-changing, and the power of creativity in supporting one's mental health, physical and emotional well-being can be phenomenal. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Cathy Williams. Hello, Cathy, and welcome to Let's Talk Clarity.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure, and you're coming all the way from?
Melbourne, Australia.
I know, we're looking at the time zones here, so we're just chatting about that. So yes, it's, I'm glad that we managed to get a time in there and have this podcast, because I'm really excited to dive in and find out more about what you do, how you help your clients, and of course, behind that, your story as well. But before we dive in, I'm just going to do a little intro. So Cathy is a body-based healing and creative arts therapy expert and founder of Intuitive Self. She helps people reconnect their intuition through somatic and expressive arts. Also, an award-winning author and speaker, Cathy draws on her personal healing journey to support others in reclaiming their body, mind, and heart. Now, with over 17 years in community development and social justice, she brings compassion, creativity, and depth to her work. Wow, Cathy, that is a fair bit there.
It sounds so strange to listen to it back.
It is, isn't it? It's when it's kind of been said back to you. So it kind of gives you that little relaxed kind of bit where you don't have to do a full intro. But I am going to ask you to kind of introduce a little bit more in depth about who you are and talk to us about your personal journey, starting with that before we dive into everything else.
Of course. Yes. So I started Intuitive Self back in 2016. And the purpose of it is really to create spaces and resources and experiences to connect people deeper with their body and their body's wisdom, and to learn to trust in their intuition and their intuitive knowing.
Yeah.
And I do this through body awareness, through movement therapy practices and creative arts therapy practices. So it's very playful. It's very led with a curiosity and really starting that dialogue with self through speaking to the body, through speaking to the heart and the mind, and feeling into our body as a resource to navigate life with.
Absolutely. Wow. Amazing. So obviously, there's a story behind this that leads you to do what you do and why you do what you do. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about this journey? What led you down this path?
Yeah. So I haven't always been this body aware. I was someone who lived predominantly in my mind. I was very busy. I've kind of jam-packed my days. And kind of, I guess in hindsight, was quite disconnected from my body. I sort of treated my body as a bit of a vessel to get from A to B rather than in partnership with my body.
And it sounds like a lot of people do that. And, you know, I'm resonating. I'm guilty of that too. So
It's so common.
mm,
And I feel from my experience, I think that I was living in my mind because I needed to keep myself busy, because if I allowed myself to stop or to pause, I would feel too many feelings, and that overwhelmed me.
mm,
And I think I learnt from a really young age that I wasn't safe in the expression of those feelings. So it was a bit of a coping mechanism to just suppress them, disconnect from
yeah,
them, and live in my mind instead.
yeah.
And this all, I guess, came to a head when I was busy working overseas, doing community development work in developing countries, and just came back to Australia, and I was incredibly burnt out. I was quite jaded. And I was invited to a women's circle of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And in that women's circle, the facilitator had just come back from her dance and art therapy training. And it was my first proper introduction to how to be with our feelings without needing to necessarily name them or talk about the story of it, but
Yeah,
actually be in the body and be present to what we were feeling and give that feeling space to be heard and known and seen and felt
yeah.
in a really creative, juicy way.
It sounds amazing because, you know, when I hear you talking about that, it's almost like if we think about ourselves when we are a lot younger and we go out dancing or to a gig or a club, we tend to kind of go and feel what's inside because you're hearing the music and you feel this sense of release, don't you? But for some reason,
Absolutely.
that is not transported to our daily life, is it? And our behaviors when things happen in life.
Yeah, and there can be this, sort of, disparity between those moments that we give ourselves to release and feel, and then
Yeah.
how we think that we have to show up, in everyday life.
Yeah, in a particular way because it's of expectations and what we need to do, and we kind of open up the drawer and put it back in the drawer, isn't it?
Yeah, and these expectations can be, external expectations, but also really unachievable expectations that we put on ourselves, I think,
Mm,
as well.
yeah. So going back to that moment when you were in that sort of movement of yourself in this women's circle, what next?
Well,
What was the realization?
speaking of release, I had this release in this space, and it was so safe. All feelings that we were feeling were welcomed, and
Mm,
we had this permission to give whatever we were feeling, which at the time was, I was feeling quite jaded and burnt out and a little bit lost with the community field that I
mm,
had chosen to make a career in. Um, and we were given, this space to express what was there. And I just found it so riveting and amazing. Yes, so I went up to the facilitator and I was like, "What is this? I need to know more." And that, set me on this journey where I was diving into the world of movement and art therapy study and mentorship and practices, and realized that this was what I needed myself,
mm,
but also this perfect combination of all of my passions and all of my world of still working with community and working with people in a capacity building way,
mm,
but through the body, which we can't escape from. Our body carries us. It's been
It's
with
our
us through all
shrine.
of our experiences, and
Absolutely.
in a creative way that's fun.
Yeah. And as we grow up, we tend to lose that creativity, or we push it aside because we feel like, there's a lot more important things that we need to be doing, and we can't be doing, arts or dance, to kind of make us feel good, because time is of the essence. I've got to get X, Y, and Z project finished, or I've got family, this, that, and the other. And life does get very busy, doesn't it?
It's so true. And it can be something that we minimize, or we don't prioritize, think that it's silly. Like I work with a lot of people who have such resistance to even, being with the body, or, I don't tend to use the word dance or art, because even those phrases have different stigma.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because that you said that a lot of times, because within my coaching practice, I do a lot of creative work with my clients, 'cause working with young people, so that, they don't want to talk straight away. So how can they express themselves? But talking about language, yes, people have said to me, "Oh, well, I'm not creative, I'm not artistic," but it's, because we've used those words, and like you said, language, Cathy, is so important. It's fundamental. And if you use dance, people think, "Oh, well, I'm not a dancer. I've never had dancing practice. I've got two left feet," kind of thing. And it's not about that, is it?
No, and we have these stories that we've created that stop us from exploring these avenues of creativity, and actually that I think can bring so much joy, but so much healing. And there's a lot within us that our body can, when we, really work on fostering that relationship with our body's speaking to us. It can become this amazing resource. And when we give ourselves the space to not have, preconceived expectations of what we're going to put out onto the page, and just free fall with different colors, lines, and shapes, there's so much healing capacity there that our psyche is, and our subconscious mind is telling us.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just go back a little bit? So when you were going to attend this first women's circle of movement, and, just find that space, what were your initial thoughts? I mean, were you thinking, "Oh my God, I don't know what to expect"? There's a fear. Did you feel judgment, going, or what people will think? What was kind of going through your head? Because a lot of the times when we want to shout out help, either to a counselor, therapist, coach, or a group like this, we're thinking about what others may think, or you've had past experiences. So what was your initial sort of thought and feeling, and how did you kind of overcome that to allow yourself to go
I
and
love
experience
that.
something new?
Yeah. I definitely feel like I was in a place where it felt like a bit of a standstill in life, and I knew that something had to change, and something had to shift, a perspective shift even. And, I had the courage to vulnerably share with a close friend of mine, who was the person who invited me to this workshop, essentially.
Mm.
So I think there was something in, being real, being vulnerable, sharing with another person. And there was that trust there that, oh, if she recommended it, then there has to be something good,
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that eased the process of stepping into it, but I definitely had my reservations. I wasn't really sure what to expect,
Yeah.
and what I was going to be expected to do, or, how the flow of the workshop would be. I went in there pretty open-mindedly, but I guess I probably felt quite nervous with what was gonna come,
Yeah. Yeah. And
and
you
it
said
turned
too,
out to change my life.
exactly. I mean, look where you are now. I mean, that's the thing. It's about, two words you said, being open-minded and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and that's hard for anyone and for anything really that we try that's new, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that I think needs to be like this continuous practice where maybe there's the fear or there's the butterflies or whatever
Yeah.
sensation comes up in the body, but actually, having some like, okay, actually the feeling behind this is a good one. I'm gonna follow that. I'm gonna follow that feeling.
Yeah, so that intuition almost, isn't it? Which many times we neglect, and I've been guilty of that too. I've got my intuition and like butterfly feeling kind of thing, but then I don't follow it because then you're in your head, aren't you? And you go, no, I've got to think logically, and that doesn't always work.
It's a really interesting balance,
Mm.
being able to recognize what is my intuition, what is fear, what is something else. And I mean, I don't always get it right, but I think the intention behind my personal healing journey and what I like to encourage in my work is building that relationship with your intuition so that you can have a better resource and like support and guide in making life decisions.
Mm. Okay, so on that note, just before we dive in a little bit more, just for our listeners today, what is it, I'm preempting now, what is it that you would like our listeners or anyone listening to this podcast or when it's on YouTube, that you want them to take away from today in a few sentences? What would that be?
I guess my main message or main takeaway would be to start to get playfully curious about how your intuition and how your body and heart speak to you.
Nice. I like that. And we'll come back to this right at the end, but I like that. So it's nice to kind of set that expectation. What do you want the people to get from today's episode, listening to it and as they're kind of thinking about their life and their journey? So the clients that you serve, who do you serve predominantly?
I've worked with a variety of different community groups over the years, and I've had the privilege of working with different ages from kindergarten and young primary school kids to teenagers, particularly young women. And now, predominantly, I work with women, so adults, and also with practitioners. So I guess my work is twofold in that I work one-on-one and in workshop spaces with women who are experiencing all kinds of things that would mean that they're disconnected from their feeling body. And then I get to work also with practitioners in the space, so social workers, youth workers, psychologists, anyone that wants to weave more movement and art therapy into their existing practice and work with clients and groups.
Amazing. That sounds wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. As you know, I mostly work with children and young people. Now, comparing the two, now we shouldn't really compare the two, but how do you find that young people and children are more open to, movement and expressive art therapy than the adults are? Or would you say it's the opposite? Or is it a hard question to answer?
Yeah, I think maybe generally speaking, the really young children have easier access to their imagination and to that vibrant play energy,
Mm.
because maybe they're a bit closer to it, that have less stories or restrictions that they've put up around that. Where there is a common challenge working with adult women, that they have, either the preconceived ideas that we spoke on before,
Mm.
or these, really deeply embedded self-talk narratives that are hard to dismantle, unpack,
Mm.
or they have lived so long in their mind that they have become disconnected from their body. But it's every case is very unique. We all have
Mm.
different relationships and different stories to our body and our sense of creativity. So it's a bit hard to, I guess, compare different age groups.
Yeah, and pinpoint it. Yes, I'm just curious because obviously it's about, for me, I'm just kind of see, when we kind of know the age range or the demographics of who come along, their purpose and their reasons for coming along or being referred to you, it's just a curiosity. What brings them to you?
Yeah. And what I always like to state, particularly if I'm starting like a group program or a group workshop, is that we all have bodies. We all are in bodies, and regardless of any story that we've been told or that we've taken on about moving, dancing, creativity, being an artist, any sort of, I like to name those preconceived narratives that we might carry within ourselves. We each move our body every day. And so being able to work with the body in whatever unique way that comes up, exists, and is available to each of us.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think that's really important because, I want to ask you in terms of, do you have a lot of clients that have disabilities, perhaps, that come to you that may not have that full body movement? And what is it like for them?
Yeah, so I've definitely worked with people who have limited range of
Mm.
movement, and it's beautiful because it's really about actually fostering their relationship with their body
Mm.
and increasing their body awareness and how their body speaks to them and their different body signals, and working within their own parameters, and they get to have agency over that. They get to set the pace with that. They are leading the inquiry of connection with their
That's
body.
yeah, and I think that's I've just got goosebumps listening to that because it is, and all of that can give them confidence and self-esteem and value, because having a disability or limited movement can cause a lot of sort of barriers for them in life as well, moving forward, whether it's with family, friends, or the workplace, within themselves, isn't it?
Yes, it can be. Yeah, it can feel so restrictive and so many barriers, as you said, to actually showing up and moving through the world in the way that they want to.
Absolutely. So let's dive into. We've already been talking about benefits and things, but I want to kind of find out a little bit more about the movement therapy and how this impacts children and young people's mental health and well-being. So, what is take us through a scenario, or what you would an example of what it would look like.
What a session would look like?
Yeah, what would this be for, and how would this impact the children? So, like, when they come to you, and to how they might leave or the results that they have, just kind of explaining a little bit more about movement therapy itself.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so I guess the basis of movement therapy is that we believe that the body is a resource to integrate all of our emotional, cognitive, energetic experiences.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, and with that at the forefront of the work that I do with people is, say let's use the example of kids, as you're talking about. So say this is a 8-week program where a group of children gather and we've got a different theme each week. We might meet for an hour, and the first bit we introduce the theme, which might be animals, and we can get them to maybe visualize their favorite animal and then start to imagine how that animal might move around the space. So they're getting their imagination and their creativity channels on.
Yeah.
They're getting into their body with what, postures or shapes it might look like, and then they can get into some imaginary play with how they move around the space.
Nice.
And then we can get them really playful with, okay, give them some little prompts of how does the giraffe interact with the elephant? And so they're using different body parts, they're using different creative movement with high, medium, low levels. They're really exploring how they're, somatically how their body wants to move and shift.
Wow.
And then we might move into some paired or group work. So they're actually using their interpersonal skills of connection. And then it might flow into some creative art therapy where they're doing some, putting different colors, lines, and shapes with pastels, like different textures onto the page. And then perhaps ending with a bit of a body check-in, a breathing exercise where they're providing some stillness, and I'm getting them to notice different things that they might be feeling in their body.
Right. Okay.
So all of this is an example of the ways in which, we're creating a safe space for imagination and play. We're bringing in different body awareness to enhance their ability to know their body, be able to acknowledge and identify what their body is doing, different feeling states, different sensations, teaching different ways of self-regulating.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah. And then being able to, I guess, feel what they're feeling in a safe, non-judgmental space, bring in play, but also invite different points of reflection of what they may have learned and how they might move differently, which is creating, problem-solving skills and interpersonal skills and building their resilience.
Do you know, it's incredible, just listening to you say this out aloud. Definitely gets that message across that, when we think about movement and we think about art therapy and express, it's not just about drawing, it's not just about moving. There's so many other fundamental knowledge and skills within that you're supporting them with. You've mentioned communication, social skills, because if you're in a group and you're working with, you've got somebody being a giraffe, someone being an elephant, they learning how to interact and move with them. And perhaps, if there is talking, then there's that talking, each other's spatial awareness. So it's a lot deeper than just all of that. With the art therapy, I'm sure you're told there's the fine motor skills as well that you develop.
Yes.
So
there's so many layers to the benefits of this work and what it's actually increasing in their awareness of self, in how they connect with their self and their body, but also how they connect with each other and the environment around them as well.
Yeah. And fundamentally, that's what we need moving forward in the world that we're living in at the moment, where everything's so fast paced. We've got a cost of living crisis happening, here in the UK, and I'm sure it's all, all over the world. Is how are they going to be
external pressure
within that environment? And like you keep saying, it's about giving yourself that space to just simply be. And that's it, isn't it? It's just, and that can be so hard as well.
I don't think that we have many opportunities, or that we're in many environments where we're really encouraged to, when we are feeling a particular emotional state, to actually lean into that feeling and
Mm,
give it some space. I think
absolutely.
it's more common for us to be told to, oh, like, no, don't cry, or put that away, or, or not here, not now. Um, and
Mm,
then we build these coping mechanisms of suppressing our emotions and masking and, you know, I guess numbing ourselves
mm,
through different means. And a big thing that I advocate for is actually learning how to recognize when a feeling rises in us,
yeah,
and, letting curiosity lead, obviously having safety and care around how
of
we
course.
explore this, but actually being curious about what it is that we're feeling and what that part of us wants us to know.
Yeah.
Our feelings exist to be felt and heard. And in my experience, when I have taken that pause and checked in with myself and been like, okay, what am I feeling? What's going on here?
Yeah.
That is the easiest way, and the entry point to actually being able to then shift that emotion
Mm,
and
yeah.
transform it.
Yeah, it's too often you're absolutely spot on there. We negate those thoughts and feelings that we get, and we get fearful of it, and we don't want it. We just want it to go away. We neglect it, or we find another distraction because we don't
Yes.
want to deal with that. And sometimes that works in certain situations, but then if you do it too often, it festers, doesn't it?
It
And then
festers and builds up.
and explodes. So
Yeah.
thinking about all of this, and it's sorry, I'm going to go back, because what you're saying as well, when you were talking about how we should just sit with things when we're little, we're curious, aren't we? And we're always asking questions, but as we get older, and then this also comes down to parenting sometimes. It's like, oh, not right now. I can't answer. Stop talking. Don't ask me too many questions. You know,
Mm,
And I don't understand where that sudden shift comes from, because we're expecting children to be curious when you're young, ask questions, be a scientist, be this. But then
mm.
as you get older, you're almost suppressed, even within the work environment sometimes, not all work environments, by the way. But it's almost like you don't want to speak up. You don't want to kind of explore or be curious, because you have a fear of being knocked down or being
Mm.
ridiculed. And I don't understand why and when those shifts happen. And I'm still trying to figure that out. Unless you've got an
There's
answer.
no, I don't have an answer, but I can definitely relate to it. And I can relate to, I think we've all had an experience where we've gone to ask a question and someone's shut us down, or
Mm-hmm.
we've gone to, say something and we've been dismissed and, disregarded. And it's so unfortunate that those kind of experiences, we can take that on, we can remember that, and our body remembers that, and we might then create a story that, oh, I'm silly if I ask any more questions, or, oh no, just keep that to yourself. And it's so unfortunate, because if you continue to move in that way, then you'll have other experiences and other evidence that it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to feel. But the power of those negative experiences weigh heavy.
Yeah, they do. And of course, some people are more resilient than others. And it depends, if you've been taught those skills. And again, I often talk about resilience, and there's good resilience and there's bad resilience. You've got the good resilience when you're trying to problem solve, and then you find other avenues and paths to get to the answer you want. But then there's the resilience where you keep just banging yourself against the same brick wall, but you're not changing something. and you're thinking about why is something not shifting. I'm resilient. Okay, but you're resilient because you keep going. But do you keep going in the same direction and not shifting anything or changing anything?
I love that.
Because that then to me that's not resilient. How can you be? Because then you're not experiencing other obstacles or ways. You're going to still keep going, but finding a different way. And that's still resilience.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that shift. I hadn't thought about it like that, but
Okay.
I definitely have my own experience of, I've got the stamina, I can keep going, but I'm banging up against the same brick wall rather
Yeah.
than, finding another pathway.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, that's the way I see myself because it's from my own experience and got me to experience more about resilience because I'm very resilient. In those days, I thought I was, but actually, it ended up being the death of me almost,
Mm,
because I was banging myself against it, but not shifting away and trying another path because I didn't know how to, or had all these other sort of fears that were not allowing me to go in those directions.
yes. Yeah,
Interesting,
beautiful.
isn't it? Interesting. Anyway, do you know what? It's so funny because all of this links. Now, I just want to kind of bring back to sort of the movement and art, the expressive art therapy. How do you believe that the educational sectors and educators can begin to use this more within their schools? Because, of course, it's not being used enough. And even within workplaces, how would you see it being implemented in an organization as well?
Mm. I think to start off with, not being so focused on our mind as our only source of power.
Mm,
We've got a gut brain, we've got a heart brain. Our body is constantly speaking to us. So actually creating a environment, whether that's a workplace environment or an educational learning environment that embraces the body and brings conscious awareness to the body, whether that's through encouraging students and different learning styles to engage with the learning through different, um, supporting how they engage with their body. So that might be taking in information, not just sitting down. Maybe they like to take in the information with moving around the space or holding
mm,
their body in different ways, having movement breaks.
yeah,
Um, and and actually, yeah, I think an intentional way that schools and workplaces could integrate this is like letting the curiosity lead, but having little practices, even if it's like, a 5 minute, let's just concentrate on our breath, or a 10 minute, let's put on some music and just, stretch, do a little silly dance, anything to remind them that they have a body, that they're in bodies,
mm,
and to
mm.
bring that into whatever they're doing in the classroom or the workspace.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely fantastic and spot on because as an ex-teacher, a primary teacher, I would do that, and occasionally I'll go in and supply teach, and I'll give those little movement breaks. But there are schools that are starting to do in these kind of activities where they'll be like, okay, movement time, movement break, or let's do a bit of breathing. But it's not enough. It needs to
Mm,
be like anything, you understand it has to be on consistent basis. It has to be part of the routine. So you form these behaviors and change of positive patterns, new patterns that improve our lifestyle, our thinking. And
yes.
unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And you're right. It just needs to be very, very subtle, and it can be done throughout the day within each of those core subject areas.
Yeah, and I think when when more people know the value of being body aware and bringing, you know, movement and body awareness practices into the everyday, like by peppering it, you know, through
Yeah,
the school day.
like that
It,
peppering.
you know, they can make it fun, and we're actually working in partnership with the body, you know,
Mm.
which is so beautiful.
And it creates better mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Therefore, you're going to be a lot more focused, more productive, and a lot of people don't do it because they think, oh no, it's going to take up time, and we've got deadlines to meet, or we've got to get X, Y, and subject done, or the projects. But actually, when you think about it, you take those little ones, you'll be so much more fired up to get those things done. That actually, you might actually save time. That's my thought, anyway.
Absolutely.
My theory.
But you're also teaching like incredible life skills, you know,
Oh,
being able to have that body awareness. And, you know, when a student comes up to you and they're not able to, you know, get their words out because their mind's racing, or, you know, their emotions are heightened,
mm,
having these techniques to come in and be like, okay, you know, like, can you put your hands on your body, and can you just breathe? You know, can we bring in some touch? Can we shake it out? Giving some
mm.
suggestions so that they can feel into themselves and be like, oh, you know, the touch, you know, I don't know, does that work? Oh, but the shaking, that feels really good. I'm going to shake. And they've got this permission to do that
Yeah.
because everyone's body aware, and, you know, we've got these embodied practices that are amazing tools.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just our bodies are incredible what they can do, and I think often we don't give ourselves enough credit of our own bodies and our own mind, especially.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time, so because I love chatting with you, and I think we could talk for hours. But I just wanted to ask you if some sort of tips and tools for parents who want to support their children at home or their teenagers. What could they start with? Just some tips to get them started.
Mm. Um, a really beautiful practice that I introduce to all ages is a body check-in with a body map.
Okay.
So the beauty of this is that you can spend as short or as long on this practice as you like, but it's basically inviting you or inviting your child to take a pause, just to check in with their body, and to, you know, see any different parts of the body that are a bit more noisy, a bit more loud, any areas that might have a particular sensation. Maybe that's a, um, goosebumps on the skin, or a different pain point perhaps, and getting out a piece of paper and drawing a sort of a gingerbread person outline on the paper, and then inviting your child to just map out on the body with different colored pens or textures or pastels, you know, what they are feeling. So they're immediately going from feeling a sensation. Oh, mommy, I feel an itchy eyebrow. Oh, great. What does that look like? And, have a little squiggle over the eyebrow. And it's such a beautiful practice because you are taking a pause, you're getting them
Mhm,
to focus on the body and different sensations,
mhm,
and actually take a moment to name what they're feeling. And you can extend upon this. This could include sensations, like I said, or it could include feelings. So, oh, I'm feeling a bit sad today. Oh yeah,
mm,
honey. Like, where's the sadness? Where do you feel that?
yeah,
Oh, I feel it. I feel it here. And you can inquire about that, or you could,
mm,
get them to draw it. What's a color that represents that? Oh, I'm thinking this dark blue, and you're bringing in this creativity,
see, yeah,
uh,
yeah,
but there's no judgment. It's not like, oh,
mm,
honey, you're sad. Oh my gosh, what's happened? It's like,
yeah,
okay, yep, there's sadness. Okay, great. Where's
Yeah.
that? Oh, yep, it's there. Okay,
Yeah.
um, this practice of pausing and feeling and naming and then putting it into a creative way.
I love that. I absolutely love that because it's really funny. I do a lot of NLP and kinetic shift, and we use that kind of, where is it in the body? How does it feel? Give it a sound, give it a color, that kind of. But didn't think about putting it down on paper as an art thing. So that's like another step, and it becomes visual and you can see it, because normally it's either just here or it's here, isn't it? But it's not
Yes.
out. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think the visual representation can be so helpful.
Mm.
And you can also, you can extend upon that further, say with that sadness example, okay, like what does that sadness need right now? Maybe it needs Teddy to come and give it a big hug. And then, moments later, okay, after that, oh, how does it feel now? And then you might draw another map where that space where you'd put the dark blue squiggle, that's now shifted, and maybe it's a sun, like whatever it is, like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
really nice visual representation of what's happening. They're using their imagination, they're identifying and naming it, but then they're able to like see the shifts, and that it doesn't stay there permanently.
Yes. Yes. They're learning that things move
Yeah.
and it's not permanent, because it isn't permanent. Our thoughts and feelings aren't permanent. And that's a fabulous way for especially visual people to see it.
Yes.
Or
Yeah, and it really
actually non-visual
embraces.
people as well.
Yeah, it embraces all of the different learning styles. And I think there's something helpful as well in um, externalizing it. So
Mm.
taking it out of the mind and body and onto paper as well.
Wow. Lovely. Have you ever thought about doing music therapy on top of that? Or is that something in the pipeline?
I think that I
Add.
would love to study music therapy and add it. I definitely get to play a lot with different music that I integrate into the sessions, and how music supports a lot of the embodiment journeys that we do. So
Mhm.
yeah, I would definitely consider studying that to add to the toolkit.
Fabulous. Oh my gosh. Right. So what I'd like you to share is just kind of going back to what we said right at the beginning about what we'd like our listeners to get out of today's podcast. But can you just round up by saying 3 simple things that our listeners can do today to support their well-being? So what is it that they could try? 3 things today, just to kind of summarize what we've been talking about that they could do today.
Beautiful. Finding a pause throughout
Mm-hmm.
their day. Bringing in some intentional, playful movement, even if that's for 30 seconds.
What could that be? Like a wiggle of the nose and doing something silly with your face?
Yeah, it could be a stretch. It could be, you know, um, moving different parts of the body that they might not necessarily give attention to. It could be putting on their favorite track and getting into a bit of a rhythm.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And the third one is to give space to anything that they might be feeling. And yeah, I encourage them to lean into that feeling, even if it's just 5% more.
Nice. Like that. Very simple things that anyone at any time can implement. So pause, a little bit of movement, and leaning in to that. It's just, yeah, lovely. Right. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, find out a little bit more, where can they go? Where's the best place?
The best place would be to head to my website, which is intuitiveself.com.au, or find me on Instagram, intuitiveself_. I have a range of free resources on the website. That's where I advertise all of my online courses, my free discovery sessions, and my online workshops. And you can also access my book, Body Wisdom, which has over 21 practices that they can use as little entry points into creative self-discovery and connecting with their body.
Oh, fabulous. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, your book, just give us a little insight about that. When did that book come out? And just a little bit deep dive into that quick.
Yeah, it came out about a year and a half ago, and I'm so proud of it. It is it's a resource where every chapter there's a different theme. I start with a poem and some stories of my own lived experience, and then I invite the reader into some practices, creative self-discovery practices, I call them, where they are actually cultivating that connection with their body awareness, with bringing in movement and creative practices into their day-to-day for self-love and self-compassion, and to feel confident in who they are.
Wow. Okay. And that's available on Amazon everywhere?
The best place to get it would be through my website.
Okay.
And it's available in ebook, audiobook, paperback.
Fabulous. Sounds amazing. Well, thank you for that. Well, do you know what, Cathy? It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I resonate with so much what you were saying on so many different levels. Honestly, I mean, I love anything creative and movement, and I think that comes from my background as well. But also as a coach as well, I see the huge benefits, and I think it's important for people to understand. There's so many so many avenues. What's the word? I can't remember. Avenues, isn't it? It's not just about art. It's not just about movement. It can develop so many other skills.
Yes, it's so holistic for our whole self.
There you go. Yeah, that was the word, holistic. I can think of the word. So as we wrap up today's episode, I just want to remind you of one powerful truth. Creativity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It helps us, as Cathy said today, building confidence, helps to reduce stress, regulate your emotions, and most importantly, find joy in being ourselves. And that's, and if you're feeling disconnected and you're feeling overwhelmed or stuck, creative expression just might be what you need to bring yourself back. Isn't it right?
Yes,
so it is, isn't it? Right. So next episode will be out on the 10th of September. And on that episode, I'll be talking about bullying and cyberbullying. So trigger warning, be in a safe environment, and seek support if you feel that you're triggered in any way whilst listening to the podcast. So just be warned, there is talk about self-harm and also touch on suicide. So please make sure that you're in that safe environment. But that episode will be out on the 10th of September. It'll be packed with lots of insights, tools, and real talk to help yourself or pass on to anybody who may need support. Now, before I go, when I'm not podcasting, I work with children, families, and individuals to integrate creativity into their mental health and well-being support. So thinking about your mindset, the fundamentals. So whether it's through coaching, workshops, or school-based programs, I'm here to help. So please do reach out to me. Details will be in the content and down below. Now, if you've got a story to share or a message, then email me if you would like to be on the podcast at mindsethorizons@gmail.com. Thank you very much for joining me today. And once again, thank you to Cathy Williams. It's been an absolute pleasure, as I said, and I'm sure we will touch base again at some point. Until next time, you've been listening to Let's Talk Clarity, where we have honest conversations for better mental well-being, one talk at a time. Take care. Doesn't want to go off.